twice does
Right.
not constitute
Which I assume it
100%
was true because you
plans
just
for
offered that and there
preliminary.
was no comment.
If that's the position,
Yes.
then he remains in breach until he brings back something that does qualify
Okay.
as preliminary or 100%. He has 30 days from the time that that notice is provided. And so your direction to me would be, let him know that you consider him in breach based on the 75% submittal done twice. And so that
Which
can
you're
be
gonna do
done.
anyway.
And that can be
But
done
when he
in-
brings you
and
something,
he's
then
got
there has
30
to be some
days.
negotiation. Mel, go ahead first.
Based on what you just said, and adding that the comments by Rotundo, if I understand this correctly, the comments by Rotundo will be addressed within 30 days. Is that correct?
Will need to be.
Or else he
Cure the
needs
breach.
to-
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, those comments that deal with the sufficiency of the plan, not all of the comments would have related to sufficiency issues. Some of them will have.
I'm referring to the ones that.
Yeah. That
So
would need to
we
be
go
done.
ahead with what you said with that qualifier.
Mhm.
Is that what you're looking for, Mr. Chair? Is that what we're looking for? So we can proceed forward on this?
Well, I'm still not clear. Why does that have anything to do with an amendment?
Doesn't.
It doesn't.
Doesn't.
You don't need an
Okay.
amendment.
That's
No,
not.
But it's enough. Could be
So,
addressed.
in
You simply
one
need to
bucket-
direct us to
In one bucket, we
provide
are
the
saying
breach.
that, go forward, address the sufficiency issues, come back in 30 days, or 10, or 7, as you said you could. But, so that is just a directive, that bucket is clear and is out of the way. Now we need to work on either an amendment that combines the other two issues of usage and clarifying the outstanding issues, or breaks them apart. We could break it apart and say right here today that we do, which is I think what you are in favor of, clear up the usage issue, say.
Yes.
Usage, go forward. And then the next amendment would be that, and is this, and my next is this an amendment? That we charge you with coming to an agreement on the other outstanding issues.
Okay, so
Is that really an
well, and
amendment?
so here's a vital piece of information that I think you need to know in
Yes.
order to decide whether or not you want to direct staff to negotiate a use alone amendment
Yeah.
or to,
Because that is, I just,
put
that
it
is
all
not my
together.
explanation.
On March 30th of 2021, I sent to Premier's Council an email at 2:36 PM wherein I asked for the parties to negotiate an amendment, and I addressed all of the issues that I've talked about here today. And the answer was, we do not want to do that.
Okay.
So you have no lever to make them amend to address the costing issues that were talked about March 30th of 2021 at 2:36 PM, unless it's all dealt with in a single amendment.
And that is exactly why I suggested at the beginning that we combine the two. I agree with you 100%, Mitch, that we've got to do it because it's not going to be an auto thing. But you let that go, we have no leverage to get any of this done, guys.
We have to
And
tie
we
it
gotta
all
have-
together.
I don't agree with that.
Okay.
The reason I don't agree with that is because they're separate issues. One of them is whether he does it or a successor to him does it. Whoever is going to build on there probably is going to inherit this lease and have to comply with whatever it says as to what can be built there. There's still a default that's floating out there. And if that doesn't get addressed, even if we amend it, the default remains. To me, they're separate. So we can do the amendment, they both work, by the way. We can do the amendment now, we're done, we don't have to worry about that anymore, you can check that box. But we can also direct them to negotiate that. I don't agree with our council that we lose our lever because we've already got, and I'm sure Hamid doesn't feel this way, but we've got a default in the lease and he has to cure it. And so the burden is on him to cure that right now. It's his best interest to put the effort in to cure that because he's still got that candle that's burning and it's gonna go out in 2 years. And he's got to make that work. So it's in our interest to find a solution because we want a building there, to your point, unless I'm wrong. My understanding is we do want to go back and do it. And then, and the other point is that for him to put a building there, he has to make some adjustments into what he submitted. So there should be some collaboration there that will get us to the next point by the time we have our next meeting. And this is very black and white, because council will come back and say, we did it, and we'll get a phone call from Clara
Did what?
saying,
What's the
we were able to sit down and they went over with the architect what they did and the adjustments were made, and Recondo had seen them, and we believe that, we can check all those boxes and we can move forward with that, okay? At the same, but I would also say, to your point, while you're doing that, that time is the right time to also address any discrepancies in our interpretation of the lease terms and your interpretation of the lease terms. Those should run concurrently. That's a good faith effort to me on both, on your part and
Seems
our
like
part.
that speaks to putting them together, because to Amy's point, it sounds like, the cure sounds like it's easy. Getting out of breach sounds like it's pretty easy.
It does sound like it's pretty easy to me.
But
Mr.
what
Chairman.
isn't easy is addressing these other outstanding issues, as witnessed by what you just read us. They choose not to. Well, there's some reason you choose not to address this. And if they continue to choose not to, where does that leave us? It leaves us between a rock and a hard place, as this then goes back amended into city council and starts down the path. And we still have not determined very important components of that lease. So it needs to be tied to something. I'm sorry.
Maybe, yeah.
There's
And
three
whatever
different
it
things
is.
regarding that, right? This is some.
Yes, it's.
Three separate topics. One is submitting plans to your satisfaction is 100%. That's
And that's
wrong,
easy.
right? Two is the change of use. And the third one is this so-called discrepancy in the lease, correct?
Correct.
They're independent of each other. I would argue, I think in any place we go and argue, they're totally independent of each other. Change of use is pretty straightforward. We've all been working in good faith, we've approved a set of plans, you've seen them, yes, technically it doesn't qualify as you guys seen these plans for the last year, right? Okay, so going back and changing the use should not be an issue, that should be one separate amendment, that should be done very easy. What I don't want to, the issue of discrepancy in the lease, again, please point out to me where it's ambiguous. To ask me to do this over the next 30 days, I will tell you it would be impossible. Because any communication that goes back and forth here, I can tell you, we asked to extend the options, and that process should have been done in 90 days. We're sitting here today, we still don't have it. We don't have it. The authority sent their check out last week only to the appraiser. The appraiser's been sitting there waiting. So to expect everything to get done in 30 days, it'll be impossible, especially negotiating amendments to a lease.
But that's the contract, right?
It's a project,
It's
exactly.
separate.
You tell me
If
where I,
it's
which set
separate-
contract, you're
If
asking me.
it's separate, then you can do it later, but you still have to get to 100% with our staff. And you got 30
That's
days
easy.
if we don't do anything. Is that
That's
correct?
easily done.
Yeah.
I'll look to.
So the plans were submitted today.
Yep.
Evidently. So the third option is the clock starts today for 90 days for permits and final approval by this board.
Yeah.
In 90 days.
If we accept them.
We didn't have anybody
We're not
make a
doing
motion to that effect.
So to your point, if I may,
Yeah.
you're 100% correct. I mean, he could have submitted plans that checked all the boxes as they are, and we'd still have issues relative to the interpretation.
Right.
Ours versus his is the lease. So they are separate. And for us to do the amendment to change the usage, that's also, we can do that with or without him. We don't need him, or we don't need any tenant to decide for us what we're going to allow. Okay, so to me, they're all separate issues to be determined by us. And if he can still make the changes to the plans and still have a disagreement with us over how to interpret certain provisions in that lease. And we hopefully will have a meeting of the minds and have that worked out. But to the extent that we don't, then it'll go to a whole different level, if you will. But to me, there are three different things, and there's not a leverage built into any of that, to me.
Well, as I explained to council back in March when I raised this issue, they need for you to say yes to change the usage. At this moment, they don't have a legal right for you to change the usage. You could hold them to the auto sales that they came to you and asked for. And so since they
Therein
need,
lies the leverage.
since
if
they
I'm
need
correct.
something from you and you have issues with their
I
behavior,
understand.
having everybody,
I don't find that to be a leverage.
Then we're gonna sit
I don't
here,
think any
wait,
court of
excuse
law-
me, sir, do you? I really appreciate your comments, but please allow us
So,
to have a
so
conversation.
let's just say we say you see it our way, or we're not gonna change the usage. That's basically
No,
what I'm hearing.
no, I think at least a willingness to have a conversation on this topic, which has not been proffered by outside counsel. It has not. We have raised the issue, and they said, we're not talking about that. Well, that kind of gives you a hint of what the mindset is. So I think we need a little leverage, no matter what it is, to at least get them to acknowledge that these are issues. And I'm not sure I believe that you can't come to terms in 30 days on that. I think you can if you put your heads to it.
If you want it, you'll do it.
Yeah, that's right. If you want it, make it happen. Build it.
I mean, I do this all day for a living.
So-
Okay,
Well, the
Yeah.
item before us today is only whether we set the 100% or not. The other two issues can be discussed, and I guess you can do it in 30 days, or maybe can do it later. So if we don't have a motion to accept, is there any other discussion? We all understand the ramifications. I think Premier understands we have 30 days to cure, to get to 100%, or some agreement between the engineers
That's perfect.
and.
well, if
Anything else, Claire? Am I missing anything?
if you don't have a motion to accept, then you need a motion to direct
So we
staff to renew the notice of breach.
Okay.
That's
Before
one or
we
the
do that,
other.
can I make one more comment?
Yes.
And I think this will kind of get you where you need to be. We don't have to do anything today. So we can, kick that can down to the next meeting or what have you, and not amend it. We are in no
Right.
sense of urgency on our part to amend the lease. So we can kind of see how the next 30 days plays out, which, doesn't hurt us. Like I said, we can amend it anytime we want. Hopefully there will be a fire burning.
But we need an amendment
No one.
to let
So
them
now-
know that they are in breach.
That's
Send
what.
another.
No,
We
no,
can
no,
do
no,
that
no,
after
no,
that. We
motion.
just-
A motion, I'm sorry.
Motion to
Yeah,
have them.
a motion.
Mel?
You is, I don't understand what you mean by to see how the next 30 days plays out.
It's a good faith. I'm floating good faith.
Well, no, I'm with you, and I agree. Good faith to, well, what are we trying to accomplish is my question.
Because
Get to
all of us
agreement on
here
it.
have had some degree of careers where we all had to do things in a sense of urgency, because they're important to us. So I'm not coming from any direction that you guys haven't in your own lives. If this is important and the clock is ticking and we need to get, and things need to get going, to me, I'd like to see our tenant and his counsel and his architect do whatever they need to address those issues that are on the table. One of them being the Rotundo comments, which is easy enough to do, so that should be like a no-brainer.
I'm
But
with
the
you.
other one is to get back to your March letter, and you're the council, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, let's get together, okay? Let's kind of have something where we see some traction in that, so the board, when we resume, or when we come back into our next meeting, we can see what's accomplished. There may be 20 things that are on there, and there may be 10 that can be resolved with some dialogue and some other, dialogues and documents and whatever one needs to be done. And there may be some where you just don't agree on. But let's at least see what's been done in the 30 days, and that's my point. If we come
I
back
agree
in
with you.
30 days and nothing's been done, and there hasn't been a meeting, then to me, to where I think you're going with this, that doesn't bode well as to the level of cooperation that I'd like to see from a tenant at our airport to solve a problem to move forward. That's
Okay.
me, Mitch Vogel, one guy talking.
Let's do one more thing before we have other discussion, Mel, can we? And-
Okay.
Or do you just have a comment?
I want to comment.
Yeah.
That might be, Mitch answered my question, I think for all of us. If we did nothing, where are we? What's happening? at least Mitch laid out a few things that could be done in the next 30 days, which makes it easier for me to say, let's do nothing, let's see what happens in 30 days, and then we'll really know where we stand. Or we'll know better where we
Right.
stand.
So with that, based on advice of counsel, I'm looking for a motion to renew the letter of breach of contract.
So,
That's what we have to do.
Second.
Okay, second, I got a second, do you have that? Mr. Shemmy, any other discussion? Mr. Shemmy got one more chance.
Respectfully ask that you don't need to breach your contract. And, I'll deliver everything I'm supposed to do in 30 days.
Well, we have to do renew the breach of
Why
contract.
do you do that?
So we-
If you don't mind me asking.
Council,
Would you like to handle that?
Advice of counsel, yeah.
Certainly. So, once you receive preliminary plans, it is incumbent upon you to approve them. You have been submitted a document that Premier has indicated constitutes preliminary plans. You need to make a determination whether or not that requirement has been met. Because if it has, then you have an obligation to consider approval of it. If it hasn't, then it's appropriate for you to say, we don't think you've met that lease requirement, and we are asking for you to give us something that does, so that we can do our job of approving it once an appropriate submittal has been made. It is simply direction back to the tenant to say, this doesn't qualify as preliminary plans, you need to give us the other thing in order for us to do what we need to do, which is approve or deny and explain why denial would be.
I have a motion and a second to renew the letter. I think we're done.
And then just for
No, I think we're done, yeah. I think we've already heard that comment, so. All in favor, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, Gene, where are you at?
He's not able to.
Oh, he's not able
You
to.
can comment, participate.
Okay. Anybody opposed? None, hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, appreciate it.
and just
Good luck.
for a point of clarity, following up on Mitch's suggestion and what we have all agreed to here, it is incumbent upon council, staff, our council to take the next 30 days and address the issues that are outstanding in relation to the lease. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I had asked for y'all to direct us to engage in those discussions
Yes.
and either bring back an amendment or to bring you a status.
And
That
I
was
would-
what I thought was an
If you
appropriate
don't
next
mind,
action.
can I
on
just
that
at
item.
least have a shake of the head that you are willing to talk about these things in an open and honest way, to look toward getting this done? All right.
Our hope is that will happen in
Yeah.
the next 30 days, and you guys will make more progress.
Great, thank you all, appreciate that very much. Okay, good luck. Okay, next item is noise abatement operations summary under the executive director, and I think Robert Pratt is going to make the presentation.
Mr. Chair, if I may, before.
Yes.
I apologize for the interruption, but I do have someone, I invited a guest this evening, and I'd like to introduce him.
Yes.
I didn't have a chance to do that earlier. Demaric, if you could stand up. Demaric is one of our former interns. He's also a graduate of Lynn University and is currently a flight instructor at Lynn University. So if you want to say a couple of words.
Great, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Sorry, you had to sit through that.
He doesn't.
You should have gone first.
He is not shy.
Yeah. Oh, that would do it.
No pressure here.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is BRAA, and I'm from the capital of the Caribbean. I'm here to discuss the terms of my lease. I'd like to make some amendments, but I guarantee you won't be going back and forth by the time. So a few years ago, I did my internship here. It was a great experience, and it was an honor to work with the staff here. What I can say is that without that internship, I would never be able to graduate from there, because my major was aviation management, and an internship is a prerequisite not only to get your bachelor's, but also to walk the stage. So without that internship, I would never be able to get that degree. Second of all, while I was here as an intern, I was able to receive the Florida Airport Council Scholarship second time around. it was much easier for me to get that scholarship because FAC is all about giving scholarship to people that looks like they're going to become an airport manager. So it was much easier for me. In addition, at the time, they had a scholarship that, not a scholarship, but a competition that they were giving out to like all the schools that are with the association. Lynn was one of the universities. I and I was able to win that competition. If I wasn't working here as an intern, that would not be possible. The competition was about problems that airport have, and they gave us like a list of questions. I think it was like 6 questions, and you're gonna choose one, and then you're gonna compete with other schools like Embry-Riddle, Polk State, BRAA College, FIT. And the one I chose was on solar energy. Now, airport is just the perfect place for solar because it's always an open space. But at the time, there was a big problem. With solar, there was the issue of glare. That was one thing. So that was a pilot state. Second of all, most airports didn't have like a perfect place for it. So what I did while I was here, I came up with an idea while I was working with BRAA out in the field. I started looking at like how Boca could actually have solar, like just as much solar as another airport with more open space. Because in order for me to win this competition, I had to do extensive research. I went to HD, I went to Lakeland, because those were the 2 airports with solar farm. So one of the things I thought about was how Boca could have just as much panel, and I came up with an innovative idea. The judges asked me to put a patent to that idea, and I never did, but that was something that was big for me at the time. In addition to all those good things from working here, I also learned my weakness. Well, one of my weaknesses, and that was like office work. When I was in high school back home, I graduated as one of the top science students. I was very good at chemistry. So immediately I got to work in a lab working for alcohol. And most times we were doing like 16 hours each day, just mixing chemicals. So we weren't interacting with people from the outside world. Every day we go to work, put on our gears, and just in a lab, mixing chemicals constantly. And I said, we weren't meeting people from the outside world because the moment you enter the compound, you're closed off from the rest of the world, right? So when I did alcohol, I came here to the US, and this was something that was big for me because this was my first office job. But I realized that I kind of looked at some things as being like easy. The office job just looked too easy compared to what I was doing before, so I kind of just overlooked stuff, and I realized that those simple mistakes can cost you a lot. I remember when I leave late, like at 12 to come here, like at 1, I don't want to work in the office, so the first thing I would do is find Rob or Jose, and I would be like, hey, is there any workouts in the field? If they say no, I'll probably say something like, okay, let's go break something and fix it. So this was something that was good for me. But when I leave here, I was like super motivated to like, okay, take on different challenges. So once I get my degree, I start working. I worked my way all the way up to CFI at Lynn. From CFI, I got promoted to becoming a check instructor, and then recently I got appointed to be the assistant chief at the flight school. Now I can see that I'm learning the office stuff a bit more, but I still don't like it that much. So I tell them, hey, I'd only accept this position if I still get to fly. So like, that was pretty much my experience here. Like I said, it was great. I learned a lot. I learned about the day-to-day operations at airports, and that's it.
Great, thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you. Okay, Robert, I think you're on now. Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Robert Pratt, Operations Coordinator. Before you, the operations and motivation report for the month of July 2021. During the month of July, there were 4,687 operations, which is 31% less than operations of July last year, and 26% less than operations of July 2019. JA deliveries were up 14% compared to July 2020, and were a 42% increase compared to July 2019. And gas deliveries were down 100% compared to last July and July 2019 as well. And these are the updated fuel numbers, which include signature flight support. There were 5 different households that filed noise concerns during the month, most of which were from the online web portal. During the month of July, Customs had 136 aircraft clearings, which is up from 99 total aircraft clearings for July of 2020, and there was 1 vessel clearing as well for the month. 136 aircraft arrived from a total of 17 different countries. There were 32 after-hours clearances in the month, of which 22 occurred on days when the facility is normally closed. And that concludes the operation report for the month of July. I'd be happy to answer any questions should you have any.
Thank you, Robert. Any questions? Okay, hearing none, let's go forward to the presentation of the Boca Raton Airport Authority's annual operating and capital budgets for fiscal year 2022. That runs October 1st of 2021 through September 30th of 2022. I do have a note, even though our Secretary Treasurer was not able to be here tonight, he did provide me with a note, and here's, I'll read it for the record. Before you this evening is the proposed budget for the fiscal year 2022. I reviewed the budget with staff and provided my input. I can also state that the input I gave was incorporated into the final report presented for board consideration. The budget reflects increases in revenue as the economy has recovered from the impacts of the pandemic last year and in the first half of this year. The budget also reflects increases in certain expense line items as we restore certain expenses that were deferred for cost cutting and increased costs associated with airfield and airport maintenance and increased professional services. Staff will go into the detail of the revenues and expenses in their presentation. I recommend adoption of the budget as presented, and that comes from Randy Nobles, our Secretary Treasurer. So with that, I'll turn it over to Scott Coa, our Deputy Director. Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to keep this brief and just hit the major highlights. As you know, we develop the budget every year on a zero baseline method. We do this keeping in mind our strategic goals that we had developed during the strategic business plan last year. So they're updated, they're up on the screen. I know everyone's pretty familiar with them, so I won't go ahead and read them to you. But we work those into our work plan throughout the year, including what we accomplished and what we aim to accomplish for next year. Just a couple of highlights. The full list of them are in the report if you want to get a little bit deeper in them, but we received another clean audit. Excellent job on that. We achieved a 49% operating margin. We're in the finishing phases of the GASB 87 implementation, which deals with how we account for leases. There's some government change there. We're approximately 50% through our master plan. The big holdup there is just getting some feedback from FAA, so it is moving a little slower, but we are making good progress on that. If you've been up and down Airport Road, you can see that project is well underway, and we're looking for a spring of 2022, completion on that. We've done a couple of pilot outreach events. Rob had a Zoom call with several pilots from the area that included a national speaker from the National Business Aviation Association. And we also widened some taxiways to take care of some issues in the airfield and meet the current FAA standards.
Before you go on to 2022, I just want to ask the board to be sure that you review all the details of the 2021 accomplishment, because those are the objective measures we use to evaluate the executive director, which we do usually in December or at the end of the year. So you may want to make sure you're very familiar with all the details. So Scott gave us an overview, but let's take a look at the 2022.
And I know Clara usually provides you with more details on those as we get closer to January, but it's certainly a good primer there in the budget report. All right, so major 2022 business objectives. We're looking to acquire approximately $30 million in grant funding from various federal and state sources. Using the inputs from the master plan, we're going to develop some leasing and lease negotiation policies and document sort of a leasing plan. So if leases come to term or things happen in the interim of leases, we have a good, sort of a roadmap of how to address those in a consistent manner. We're going to get back to some of the in-person business outreach as the pandemic is, just getting back to normal. I'm not sure if it's abiding or not, but we will be working on that program. Rob's going to include a couple of pilot outreach events specifically for the noise abatement. We're also looking forward to getting back in the classroom with some of our student chapters that we deal with. We were able to have some interaction on Zoom this year that went fairly well, but it's certainly not the same as in person. We're looking to do some increased governmental affairs outreach, and that's not just with our local representatives, city, state, and county level, but also with some of the regulatory agencies that, they've been working from home. They're still working from home. We'd like to get back in front of them in their office and, just get back on the same page with them. And then we have some infrastructure upgrades, some upgrades to the tower for the radio communication system, the standby generators for the airfield and the tower, and also some upgraded lighting system out on the airfield. So moving forward to the proposed budget, you will notice some variances in the numbers. Keep in mind where we were when we talked this time last year. We were still kind of in the depths of the pandemic, and we weren't really sure what was going to happen with aviation. Now, thankfully, the business aviation sector has rebounded significantly faster and stronger than our friends in the commercial side, and we are continuing to see an increase in fuel sales and operations as we go forward. So some of our forecasts from last year at this time, thankfully, weren't quite as dismal as they turned out to be. So rent revenue, that's a pretty stable source of income. It's also our largest source of income. The increase there is just related to CPI adjustments. It's a little larger than this year than most year due to the premier CPI adjustment coming into effect. It's a 3-year CPI adjustment, so it's a little higher than the annual ones. The fuel flowage fees, again, you can see we significantly beat our forecast. And we are predicting that we will continue to see elevated levels going into next year. So you see we've increased the budget for fuel revenues. Customs facility revenue, again, as the international restrictions dropped off, we did see an increase. So we were above our forecast. We're not forecasting as big of an increase there because with this Delta variant, there are some countries starting to put in various restrictions again. So that might be a slower increase than we see in the fuel flowage. The big variance in the other revenue is largely rental car fees. We had a fairly low number on that, but what we saw, the prices of the rental cars were going up significantly because of the demand, and the demand was up because, people just weren't using the Uber and Lyft and that sort of thing. And now that people are getting back into that public mode of transportation, I think a lot of them confirm over some of the experiences they had with the rental cars. So we do expect that will be a little bit of a drop down from what we forecast or projected for this year, just as people start using the public transportation. So that's the total operating revenue. On the non-operating revenue side, you can see our interest income was a little bit higher. A lot of that had to do with a couple of older CDs that were still carrying a higher rate, and also more funds to invest because of timing for various projects. And the operating grants, those kind of go up and down every year because it's timing and when we actually submit the reimbursement for the grants. On the expenses side, you can see we did come in below the line on, there we go, apologies for that. Below the line on personnel expenses for this year, that's largely due to attrition and vacancies. We had Ariana left and we replaced her with a more junior position, and then recently we had an operations coordinator leave as well. We are proposing a slight increase next year, and that just accounts for the full complement of staff. We're not sure if we are going to bring that ops coordinator back on, and we're kind of seeing how the facility works with the current iteration of the team before we make that decision. But we want to make sure we have that flexibility. Professional services were a little high this year. A lot of it has to do with the premier reviews on the different submittals and some of the lease negotiations we've done. Operating expenses, we are increasing the budget next year, and that's to take care of some housekeeping items that we've deferred as cost-saving measures of the last few years, namely painting the inside and the outside of the building. Airport operations, there's a significant increase, and that's largely because of two main reasons. One is a rubber removal and restriping project on the runway that we do every year or so, but we're going a little bit farther and cleaning all the markings this year as well. And then also we have an RFP out for the airfield maintenance, and that's going to increase just because we've got more landscaping coming online with Airport Road, so we want to make sure we can absorb that cost. The insurance expense increase was based on our advice from Alex. ATCT is pretty normal increases, just normal rate increases and service increases, same with the customs facility. Marketing and special events, we are kind of returning that to the pre-pandemic levels. In there of note, we included $25,000 for events, specifically pilot outreach events, but also hopefully an Airport Road ribbon cutting and a observation area ribbon cutting. And then the projects, that's based on our capital improvement plan, the finishing off of the master plan and a few other operating grants. So at the end of the day, you can see our operating income before depreciation. We're in a fairly solid position. We are budgeting a little bit lower next year, and that's largely due to some of the increased expenses. Our proposed capital outlays, this is a carryover for this year. This was a proposed replacement for the incinerator over at Customs. Luckily, since the traffic's been down, it hasn't been giving us as many problems, and Travis has been able to keep it online. But we want to make sure we have that coverage to replace it if, in fact, it does start giving us issues with the increased use from clearing fees or clearings. This is our proposed capital improvement program. As I mentioned, upgrades. Both of those units are about 20 years old, so it's long past time that we replace them. The tower communication, radios, the radio interfaces, some of the touchscreen devices, those were last replaced in, I believe, somewhere around 2010 maybe, so they are definitely showing their age and starting to give us some reliability issues. So we actually have 2 grants for that, one for the design portion and then one for the construction portion as well. And so the recommendation from staff and the Secretary of Treasurer is to approve Resolution 081821, adopting an annual operating and capital budgets for the fiscal year 2020. Happy to answer any questions or take any
Let's
discussions.
get a motion in a second, then we'll go to questions and comments. So do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Go ahead, who made the motion?
Second.
Mel made the second, okay. Okay, questions, comments, Mel?
2 things. This burn thing at Customs, we went through the first one, now we're going through the second one again?
We still have the first one there, but we were having significant reliability issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Travis, he's pretty much replaced every part on there, so it should be brand new. You never know with that.
2018, 2019, 2020, 2021.
Yeah, it's like the Johnny Cash
That's
song.
Right, and the other one, did we ever come to closure on the new impact windows, new glass for the control tower?
We're still in the research phase.
I gave you a reference, I don't know if it works.
Correct. We received 3 in the last couple of weeks,
Oh, good.
recommendations, so we will be exploring that further with those 3 references.
Considering we only had
referrals,
one
right?
originally. That's
Correct.
great.
Well,
Good.
we need to reach out to them. These are referrals that were made to us. The key is going to be whether any of the 3 can meet the FAA specs.
Okay,
But we are in that process of doing that research.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
So on marketing and special events, I see it's 56,000, almost 40%. To me, that still doesn't feel like enough, given that we have these 2 marquee events happening next year with the Airport Road debut and the observation deck. And given that, one of our primary goals is to promote the value of the airport to the community, I would strongly suggest that you add some more to the pot on that one to try to make it a little more stellar, almost on the level of the Customs facility grand opening a couple of years ago. I don't know what the amount of money would be, but it feels like it's got to have a couple of more zeros after it. Maybe 30 to not quite doubling this, but pretty close.
So $30,000.
30 or 40
Special events portion.
something like that. In
Additional 30.
addition, yeah, or maybe just round it off to 100,000. So you're asking for 56, why not just add the difference and make it 100,000 total?
Well, in principle, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, we often talk about the place of the airport, the image of the airport in the community, and the staff works very diligently to maintain that. But when you have two actual very rare events
That are
that are
newsworthy as well.
significant and are of value to the city in general, I think we should take advantage of them and maybe even look for opportunities to partner with the city on some types of activities. So I absolutely agree.
And I think the community is looking for positive news,
So we can use
developments,
good news.
and things that reflects back on the value again that we're bringing.
So we currently have $33,000 in there for the special events. It's not broken down that deep in the presentation there.
Oh, I see.
So just to be clear, you propose raising the 33,000 for that to 100,000, which would add an additional.
Well, no, I'm looking at the 56 here, which is including.
Your sum.
Oh, that's the variance.
Yeah.
That's not
the other-
the, that's
the
not
other
the
side.
budget.
I think.
Oh, I
that-
see.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
What I would
I
recommend-
didn't have all.
Can you put the line item up there?
Yeah, let me bring it back up here.
Yeah, yeah, I don't have.
The line item, the budget for next year for expenses and marketing is $196,900. Now that includes things like the scholarship, sponsorships, our work with PACE. We break that down deeper on a detail budget that's not shown on any of this, that we had called out 33,000 for the special events. So we can adjust the top line or the individual line, whatever your pleasure is.
My recommendation is that we, if there's an increase, that it not be allocated to a specific line item, because part of the effort is not just associated with this specific event, but it's all of the effort of the communications company, the vendor PACE,
Okay.
to do their part. So if you would like for us to add additional funds, I would recommend adding it to the overall marketing budget. So that gives us flexibility to work with PACE and as well as
So
with the
make the
city.
196,000 like 250,000 or 240,000, is that what we're saying? Bob?
Well, do we have a baseline? One question on
Yeah.
baseline, when we did do the customs facility opening, do we recall what that was, expenditure-wise by chance?
I don't have the exact figure. I know that catering was somewhere near 10. But then we had to figure in invitations and the
Right.
press
Audio
release
visuals.
and all of the additional things that we did,
We've
the
got
giveaway items.
Yeah,
Two of them.
So
yeah. So,
And that's why it's, they're contractual, work services that PACE provides that are kind of paid out of the same fund as well. So I think I would recommend, if there's going to be an increase in the budget, that it be to the overall marketing budget
yeah, I agree.
rather than
Agree.
to the ribbon cutting, because there's so much work that they would do leading up to it and then after a specific event, all of which is a marketing effort, community engagement effort.
So do we need to add 40,000 to the marketing budget or
We
50,000?
added,
That's all we did.
we added 66,400 in our budget versus what we spent this year.
Right, that's
And I know it was a light year,
Very light, yeah.
and so I'm not opposed to adding
Yeah, I understand.
more.
We're just trying to figure it out.
Is this not something that, as we go through the year, we can adjust? We can revisit?
We
And
certainly
so I'm
can.
on
We should have an
favor,
amount
as a
in, we
promoter.
should have an amount in.
So if I may, the amount that we're currently budgeting for sort of restores the overall approximate budget that we had prior to COVID. It was significantly reduced in the last year because we just knew we were not going to be doing any events.
Okay.
But it doesn't, I think, give us that opportunity, as Mr. Tucker and Ms. Butt are saying, of kind of making a bigger splash with regard to some of the events.
So you're saying the 2020 budget was closer to 200 grand?
It was approximately 190, between 180 and 190, if I recall.
So certainly adding 25,000 for each one, it would make some sense.
With an eye toward that money obviously going
Focus.
there,
Correct.
benefiting those two events, but giving you the flexibility to say, well, some of that's going to go to the outside contractor, some of it's going to go to another vendor.
Swag or.
Yeah,
Yeah, and for all we know, what we're gonna look like when these things are available, what kind of event we can
Right,
really put on.
exactly.
True.
Yeah, right.
You know,
And then that would be a challenge for Pace.
And if we
How
can
do we-
deliver something that is outstanding, well under that budget, then
Absolutely.
Even
then
better.
there's even
Okay.
better.
Well, and thankfully, both events will likely be outside, which is a good move. So we're seeing an increase of 50,000, is that what the idea is? Okay, yeah,
To that category, to the,
Yeah.
as you see fit. Okay.
Thank
spread those. Great. Okay, so we have an amendment. Any other
50,000.
questions? Amend the motion here. Any other comments or questions on the budget? Gene, you good? You're not with us?
I'm good. Thank you very much, Terry.
So I think you made the motion, so you're comfortable with amending the motion to say that accept this with that amendment, the 50,000?
Yes.
You're good, our second is good? Okay, so we're voting on an amended motion to accept expenses as amended. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Nobody opposed, unanimously approved. So Scott, any other things? Capital outlay, what else you have?
That motion covers the budget
Okay.
approval for next year, so we're ready to move on to the next item.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item is board members' request. Any comments from the board members? Any other issues?
I sent you a text about this. I think the next meeting may conflict with a religious holiday.
Okay.
So take a look at the next
I
meeting
think you're right.
for next month and see if we want to relocate that, just reach out.
Certainly. Thank you for that.
Okay, if we can look at that and send us a note on any potential changes to the date, that would be fine. Public comment, have we received any public comment cards? No. Any other business from any of the board members? Appreciate it. Anybody in the audience, any other comments? Okay, great. We covered a lot of territory today. The next meeting is right now scheduled for September 15th, 2021. And if there's a change in that date, we'll look at it and advise everyone.
Wow.
Hearing nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
So
Second.
move, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Approved unanimously. Thank you. Thank you all.
Good job.
Thanks for coming.
Good job, Jim, you hired.
Yeah.
Yeah.